Christmas was never just a day. It was a battlefield of ideas, faith, power, and memory. And the story behind it is far more dramatic than the celebration itself. Long before lights adorned city streets and songs echoed through winter nights, humanity stood in the cold, staring into the darkness, searching for meaning. Winter wasn't a season of joy, it was a season of fear. Crops failed, days shortened, and survival itself became uncertain. Yet, across continents and centuries, people chose not to surrender to the darkness. They get heard. They lit fires. They marked time, and unknowingly, they laid the foundation for what would become the world's most enduring celebration. Christmas didn't arrive fully formed. It was shaped slowly, deliberately, by history itself. Every empire that rose, every belief system that spread, and every society that struggled to endure the winter left its mark on this day. What began as ancient seasonal observances merged with faith was reshaped by power and refined by tradition. Christmas became more than a religious moment. It became a mirror reflecting humanity's deepest needs: hope, unity, and continuity. As centuries passed, this celebration absorbed the fingerprints of kings and commoners alike. Authorities recognized its influence, understanding that shared rituals could bind people together more tightly than laws ever could. Traditions were encouraged, adapted, and sometimes controlled not to erase meaning, but to guide it. In times of war, Christmas became a pause. In times of plague, a comfort. In times of division, a reminder of shared humanity. What makes Christmas extraordinary is not its origin, but its survival. Empires collapsed, borders shifted, and belief systems clashed yet. The celebration endured. It crossed oceans, adapted to cultures, and spoke different languages, all while preserving its emotional core. Even when stripped of its original context, the spirit remained. Generosity and scarcity, light in darkness, and connection in isolation. This is why Christmas cannot be understood by a single story or a single century. It's a layered narrative, built from ancient fears, spiritual devotion, political ambition, and human resilience. Every tradition, whether sacred or secular, carries echoes of the past. Every symbol is a survivor of time. And that's the reason to listen closely, because by understanding how Christmas was shaped by history, we uncover something far greater than a holiday. We uncover how humanity responds to uncertainty, how civilizations preserve meaning, and how a single celebration became powerful enough to outlast empires. This is not just the story of Christmas. It's the story of how history taught the world to hope. Long before the word Christmas ever existed, the world already knew the power of this moment in the year. The deepest winter brought silence, hunger, and fear. The sun appeared weaker each day, shadows stretched longer, and people wondered whether light would ever fully return. Across ancient lands, from frozen forests to stone-built cities, communities marked this turning point not with celebration as we know it today, but with urgency. Fires were lit, not for beauty, but for survival. Gatherings were not entertainment, but reassurance that no one faced the darkness alone. In these early societies, time was sacred. The cycle of seasons determined life or death, and winter stood as the greatest test. When the longest nights arrived, people believed the world itself was at risk of slipping into endless cold. Rituals emerged to protect the balanced feasts, to honor unseen forces, songs to summon strength, and symbols of life brought indoors to defy decay. Evergreens, untouched by winter's cruelty, became signs of endurance. Light, whether from a flame or a star, became a promise. As civilizations grew more complex, these observances didn't disappear. They evolved. Empires rose upon the bones of older cultures and inherited their calendars, their fears, and their rituals. Rather than erase them, new belief systems absorbed what already held meaning. The midwinter moment remained powerful because it answered a universal question. How does humanity endure when the world feels most fragile? Faith transformed the season, giving it a narrative and purpose. But the foundation was ancient. Stories of renewal, birth, and divine presence emerged not by coincidence, but by necessity. A message of hope spoke louder when darkness was real and the cold was unforgiving. The timing mattered, it always had. The season itself amplified belief, making it tangible, visible, and emotionally undeniable. Over time, these traditions traveled through conquest, trade, and migration. What began as local survival rites became shared human memory. Each culture added its own voice, reshaping symbols without breaking their meaning. The feast became a gathering of family. The fire became candlelight. The ancient fear of losing the sun transformed into the quiet reassurance that light would return. What is striking is not how much the celebration changed, but how much it stayed the same. At its core, it remained anchored to the oldest human instinct, to push back against darkness together. Even as names changed and stories deepened, the purpose endured. This moment in time continued to invite reflection, generosity, and united not. Because tradition demanded it, but because history proved it was necessary. Every ornament, every ritual, every moment of warmth during this season carries echoes of those earliest winters. They are reminders of ancestors who refused to surrender to the night, who marked time not just to survive, but to believe. The celebration didn't begin as a holiday. It began as a human response to fear, shaped slowly by centuries of struggle, adaptation, and hope. It was layered carefully across generations, carried forward by memory rather than instruction, preserved not by command, but by meaning. As generations passed and memory hardened into tradition, this shared moment did not escape the attention of those who ruled. What once belonged solely to the people born from fear, endurance, and belief slowly entered the realm of power. Leaders understood something fundamental. A tradition rooted in emotion could shape loyalty more effectively than force. The season that once united families now held the potential to unite entire realms. Authorities didn't invent new meanings. They guided existing ones. By aligning sacred narratives with familiar rituals, belief systems gained stability and reach. The midwinter gathering became more than survival, it became order. Calendars were standardized, observances formalized, and stories refined, ensuring that the same moment was recognized across vast territories. In doing so, rulers transformed a fragile, local tradition into a shared cultural anchor. Faith and governance intertwined during this season because both sought the same outcome. Unity, the promise of renewal, resonated deeply in a world defined by uncertainty. For the poor, it offered dignity. For the fearful, reassurance. For those in power, it offered continuity. Celebrations encouraged generosity, not only as a virtue, but as a necessity. When food was scarce and winters cruel, shared feasts reinforced dependence on both community and authority. Yet, control was never absolute. The people shaped the celebration just as much as institutions did. Customs varied from village to village, passed through families rather than decrees. Songs carried local memory. Meals reflected regional survival. Even when traditions were framed within an official belief, they retained their personal meaning. This balance allowed the celebration to endure without resistance. It felt inherited, not imposed. During periods of crisis, the season took on new weight. In times of war, it offered a pause in violence, however brief. Soldiers on opposing sides recognized the same symbols, the same quiet longing for warmth and home. In times of plague, when death moved faster than hope, the season preserved the idea that life continued beyond loss. The rituals didn't deny suffering, they acknowledged it, and then insisted on gathering anyway. Over centuries, this moment became a tool of resilience. It survived reforms, revolutions, and shifts in belief, precisely because it adapted without losing its core. The outward forms changed, ceremonies simplified or expanded. Symbols were reinterpreted, but the emotional structure remained intact. Light was still brought into darkness. People still gathered. Stories still promised meaning beyond the present hardship. And so, the story of Christmas becomes a story of us. It's a testament to our stubborn refusal to give in to the dark, a history of finding light when there seems to be none. It's a celebration that has outlived empires because it was never about them. It was always about a much simpler, more powerful idea, that even in the coldest winter, together, we can create our own warmth. As borders expanded and cultures collided, the celebration crossed into new lands. Traders carried it along routes of exchange. Conquerors introduced it to unfamiliar worlds. Migrants reshaped it with memories of home. Each transition added layers, turning the season into a shared language understood even by those who practiced it differently. It became a bridge between old and new, sacred and secular, authority and tradition. What emerged was not uniformity, but recognition. Different societies saw themselves reflected in the same moment. The celebration no longer belonged to a single empire or belief, belonged to time itself. It became a recurring reminder that power fades, systems change, and yet certain human needs remain constant. The need to believe that hardship is temporary, the need to mark survival, the need to feel part of something larger than the present moment. Through this slow transformation, the season held its ground not by resisting change, but by absorbing it. It allowed faith to deepen, authority to stabilize, and communities to endure. Its strength lay in its flexibility, shaped by centuries of negotiation between belief and power, survival and meaning, fear and hope, carried forward, year after year by people who may not have known its full history yet, instinctively understood its purpose. As the world moved forward and the weight of centuries pressed upon tradition, the celebration no longer belonged solely to temples, thrones, or villages. It followed people beyond borders, carried in memory rather than decree. What had once been tied closely to survival in winter, adapted to places where seasons behaved differently, yet the emotional rhythm remained unchanged. In distant lands, the celebration absorbed local colors, sounds, and customs. Foods changed, music transformed, and symbols were reimagined, but the gathering endured. The exchange was not one-sided. Indigenous traditions blended with inherited rituals, creating something neither entirely old nor entirely new. This ability to merge without losing identity allowed the celebration to thrive in worlds far removed from its origins. It became recognizable without being rigid. As cities expanded and societies industrialized, the season shifted again. Time itself changed. Factory clocks replaced seasonal rhythms, and communal life fragmented into schedules and shifts. Yet the celebration adapted once more, carving out space in an increasingly mechanical world. It became a pause in the relentless march of productivity, a sanctioned moment of rest, reflection, and reunion. What had once resisted winter now resisted exhaustion. The rise of global trade transformed the season into a shared economic event. Objects gained symbolic meaning, not only as gifts, but as expressions of care across distance. Markets responded, shaping expectation and visibility. While this shift introduced excess, it also reinforced connection. A gift sent across continents carried more than material value, it carried presence. The act itself echoed the ancient instinct to share resources when survival once depended on it. Despite criticism and reform, the celebration endured each challenge by redefining itself. Movements that sought to strip it of meaning could not erase it, because its roots extended deeper than doctrine or policy. Even when traditions were questioned or restricted, people recreated them quietly in homes, adapting language and form while preserving intention. The season survived not because it was protected, but because it was needed. In times of global conflict, the celebration revealed its most powerful contradiction. While nations fought, individuals recognized one another through shared symbols and rituals. Stories emerged of brief ceasefires, exchanged greetings, and silent acknowledgments of common humanity. These moments did not end wars, but they exposed something stronger than ideologies. Persistence of shared memory. Even divided worlds remembered the same season. As technology reshaped communication, the celebration entered a new era of visibility. Images, songs, and messages traveled instantly, reinforcing familiarity across cultures. A moment once defined by local fires and gatherings became global, experienced simultaneously across time zones. This exposure blurred boundaries between sacred and secular, personal and public. Yet even in this vast scale, the core remained intimate. Families still gathered. Individuals still reflected. The noise of the world softened it, if only briefly. What makes this transformation remarkable is not the scale of change, but the continuity beneath it. Across thousands of years, the celebration retained its essential purpose: to mark, to renew ope, and to reaffirm connection. Every adaptation served survival in a new form. Where winter once threatened life, isolation and uncertainty took its place. The response remained the same: gather, share, remember. Today, the celebration exists in countless forms, observed differently, yet understood universally. Some approach it through faith, others through tradition, memory, or culture. Its meaning is no longer singular, yet its presence is unmistakable. It stands as proof that human traditions do not endure by resisting change, but by carrying forward what matters most. Beneath the lights, the music, and the rituals lies the same ancient truth recognized long before calendars were written. Darkness is temporary. Community is strength, and memory, when shared, becomes powerful enough to outlive empires, cross generations, and turn a single moment in time into a global inheritance. Shaped endlessly by history, yet forever anchored in the human need to believe that light will return. What emerges from this long journey is not simply the history of a celebration, but a reflection of humanity itself, across ages of fear, faith, power, and transformation. The season endured because it answered needs that never disappeared. It reminded people, again and again, that survival was not only physical, but emotional, that meaning mattered as much as food, and connection mattered more than comfort. Through ancient winters, imperial ambitions, global expansion, and modern uncertainty, the celebration adapted without losing its heart. It absorbed belief without becoming rigid, embraced culture without losing purpose, and welcomed change without forgetting its origins. Every generation reshaped it, not to replace the past, but to carry it forward in forms that still spoke to their world. This is why the celebration continues to resonate across borders, beliefs, and time. It is not preserved by tradition alone, nor by faith or commerce, but by memory passed quietly from one generation to the next. In that memory lives the same promise humanity has always clung to: that darkness does not last, that unity brings strength, and that even in the coldest moments, people can create light together. Thanks for watching.